Watership Down will be the book everyone will think of when they hear Richard Adams. But his writing career didn't end there. Just do a simple Google search and you will find he has a pretty impressive body of work. But that leaves the question. How do you follow up Watership Down? It was a lightning in a bottle publishing sensation, and following up a book like that can either establish Adams or make him a one-hit wonder. But his next book is actually one that Adams himself is extremely proud of, and would be what made him commit full-time to be an author. And one that completely surprised me, even though it can be a mixed bag. So sit back and relax, folks, as we move away from the hills of England to the fantastical land of Belka, as we dive into Shardik, a book that looks into the nature of faith. Shardik is a 1974 fantasy novel and is the second work of Richard Adams. It's a dense work that, as stated before, would make Richard Adams end his job at the civil service to pursue writing full-time. This book came as a complete surprise to me. I found the book while cruising a used bookstore, and seeing a book of Adams that I never heard of caught my attention, though I wasn't really sure what to expect. Part of me wondered if the book wasn't that good, since my exposure to Adams never brought this book up, which may have meant that I was in for a bad time. But I'm happy to say it was completely the opposite. To start, this book has one of the best openings I've read. Ever. No joke. The opening alone is a masterclass that sets the mood and style of writing we are in for, and showing what happens when that writing shines. We open into a peaceful forest, where Adams' naturalist prose builds a forest of peace as the animals live their lives. But then the animals hide at the approach of something big. Menacing. Huge it was. Gigantic. Standing on its hind legs, more than twice as high as a man. Its shaggy feet carried great, curved claws as thick as a man's fingers. It was a bear, such a bear as is not seen in 1,000 years, more powerful than a rhinoceros, and heavy as 8 strong men. It reached the open ground by the rock and paused, throwing its head uneasily to one side and the other. Then once more it reared up on its hind legs, sniffed the air, and on the instant gave a deep, coughing bark. It was afraid. It's afraid because it's running from a forest fire, and the intro ends with a mysterious bear running into a river to escape it. How's that for an opening? A giant bear running away from a forest fire. If that doesn't make you want to know what is going on, then I don't know what will. After that, we are introduced to our main character, Kelderic. Oh no, fantasy names. A hunter who is known to be not particularly smart. I know little of him, but I believe he is known for something of a simple fellow. They laugh at him. He plays with the children. He lives with his tribe, the Ortelgian? What the? Note to self. Learn to read fantasy names before recording. The Ortelgian, on a small island isolated from the land of the Belka Empire. While hunting, he comes across a leopard that almost kills him, but the giant bear from before saves him. A moment that leaves him in shock till, slowly, there came to him, not all at once, but brightening and burning up, little by little, like a new lit fire, the realization of what, or who, it must truly be that he had seen. He goes back to his village but cannot speak of the events that happened till he's with the head baron and priestess, with the news that the bear he saw can't just be any bear. It was Lord Shardik. Shardik is part of their religion as a form of God, God's form made flesh, commonly said to be the power of God. It is then we are told more about the backstory of the Ortelgian, fancy names, how they used to rule the land of Belka with their power of God, but were betrayed a long time ago that resulted in Shardik's death, forcing the people from a civilized to a barbaric, isolationist society just trying to get by. But they believe that one day Shardik would return, and when he does, that means he will impart on them God's truth. And that job is given to Kelderic and the head priestess named the Taginda. Fantasy names. The only thing is they don't know what that truth from God is. His message and his purpose we cannot yet discern. Our work is simply to wait, to be ready to perceive, and to carry out God's will, whatever it may be. However, that doesn't stop others from taking that news as a sign to do what they believe, like to Belka, to regain what is ours. So that's scratching the surface of the plot. It wants great people believe their form of God has returned to them and believe that means they are to regain what they lost so many years ago. But as it's clearly presented, Shardik doesn't want them to take Belka. In fact, we have no idea what Shardik actually wants. The book never, throughout its run, shows whatever goal Shardik had, or even if Shardik is even really Shardik. We are never shown the world through Shardik's eyes, or get any real confirmation that Shardik even is a divine being from God. For all we know, he's just a bear used by people to push forward their own agendas. Which is the big theme of the book, even if the book doesn't quite follow through with it. Everything about Shardik is clearly a look at the power of faith and how it's used. From the beginning, we are seeing how Shardik's appearance inspires a people to become something better, how people feel threatened by such hope, but also how people can impose their own views, warping the original purpose, all in order to justify the use of doing terrible things. The only reason Keldric wants to take over the capital of Belkic, even though he knows that's not what Shardik wants, is so he can prove to another man he's not a coward. Which works. They actually take over Belka, and Keldric becomes the new king, but he's now forced to keep Shardik caged and drugged in order to keep his power. And in order to keep his rule, he's forced to bring back the slave trade to continue his fight against rebels, which only puts him in a negative light when the rebels plan to kill Shardik, but are only able to let the bear free, which suddenly changes the story's direction as it focuses more on that slave trade when Keldric, after a long journey to get Shardik back, finds himself part of the slave trade he created. Oh, the pathos! Yeah, it's something I both like and was disappointed with the book. I love how the story had a lot of ambiguity with Shardik, so the plot kept you guessing what would happen next. But when the slave trade takes over the second half of the book, it felt we were in a completely different story. It all makes general sense, the events never feel out of place, and it's actually foreshadowed in the beginning of the book, but it can play with the overall tone and message the book wants to tell, when it looks like you're reading a book about how faith can be abused, only to end with the truth of Shardik being to take good care of the children. The same can be said with the writing. I barely touched this last video, but the main trademark of Adam's writing is his naturalistic writing style. His use of it helps so much in bringing the world of Belka to life. That opening I couldn't stop praising about is because of that style, and overall it shows Adam's ability to make a fantasy world seem almost real. If anything, I was getting a bit of a Game of Thrones vibe, since while this takes place in a fantasy world, it's a very grounded fantasy, more concerned with politics and faith, and features a pretty large cast of characters, so hey, Winds of Winter ain't coming out anytime soon. However, there are times where Adams' writing can also be his worst enemy. No lie, this book is huge. It's dense and packed. The edition I have here is 500 pages, which I can read pretty easily in a week, but this book is just... look at that. All 500 pages worth. It's still going. And you wonder why I had to delay this for another week. And part of the reason for that is Adams' own, let me show you all the details writing that can at times drag the story down. It's a make it or break it feature depending on your mileage. I was okay with it overall, but there were times I just felt like the plot was making no progress. Not to mention how Adams throws in a last minute romance with Keldric, with a character we meet in the beginning, but don't see till much later in the book, and only after the reunion does he go, oh hey, turns out I was attracted to you this whole time. Lame? Shardik can have its problems, and it will affect whether the book is for you. But even with the cracks, I still feel this is a good book. I love how it tackles the very gray area of faith, about how people use religious figures for their own gains and how those people can lose it, all while finding redemption. Plus, it shows a bear smashing a man's head like Gallagher does to watermelons. Yeah, the book can also get extremely graphic at points, and it's awesome. Also, apparently, Stephen King uses a character named Shardik for his Dark Tower books, who's a cyborg bear. I wouldn't know. I haven't read the Dark Tower books. Yet. Shardik can be a mixed bag, but it's a good mixed bag that shows Adams is not afraid to be ambitious with his writing, letting us look into the good and bad natures that come with faith, and it's up to us to figure out our own takeaways of what Shardik means. Hey, thanks for watching. What do you guys think? Was Shardik good? What are your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments below and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Next time, we will be concluding our look at Richard Adams with a book that has all of the feels. And boy, do I have some things to say about you. Till next time, fellow bookworms, like, share, and discuss. And have a nice day.